everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of Guided Listening on Trombone Guide. I'm Alex Knutrud, and I'm so excited today to talk to you. This is Amelia Rosenberger. She is one of the creators of Yoga for All Musicians, which is a program and blog that's designed to help support wellness, both physical and mental, for musicians of all instruments that are constantly performing and doing things with their bodies that for long periods of time maybe were not designed to do originally. Amelia is an excellent trombonist as well as a certified yoga instructor, and she has basically dedicated her professional life to helping us play more naturally and more efficiently and with a greater appreciation for how our bodies are working, so that we can play for longer and enjoy this vocation and avocation that we all participate in. I will tell you all off the bat that I spent this week exploring a lot of what Yoga for All Musicians has to offer. Amelia has a wonderful YouTube channel that has tons of material that's available. I have to say I was floored by the experience that I had introducing some stretching and yoga and basic movements into my routine weekly. I found so many benefits. So I would encourage you all to check out all of her resources. But for now, I'm just super excited to introduce her. Welcome, Amelia.
Thank you so much, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for such a sweet introduction.
Well, I'm so excited to get right into it, and I kind of want to start. For those people that maybe haven't gotten a chance to meet you, I would say that you're picking up quite a following in the trombone community. At least people are starting to know your name. For very good reason. I think that the role that you're filling for our community has been long overdue, to be completely frank. And I'm so excited that you can do this for all of us. Maybe you'd like to take a couple minutes and share your story. Talk a little bit about how you got into this, how you found your way into yoga, into trombone and yoga together, and maybe where you woke up one day and said, "This is my calling. I really have to do this."
Yeah, absolutely. So I come from a very musical family. Both my parents, my grandparents are all musicians. My grandma was a professional vocalist and taught at the University of Buffalo. And so music has been a huge part of my life. Growing up, I started playing piano when I was 3 years old. And when it came to sixth grade, it was just very obvious to me that I would join band. I picked the trombone because I was looking at all the other instruments and I was thinking, all of those buttons look really confusing, like looking at the clarinet and the flute and the saxophone. And I was like, I don't want to have to worry about all of that. So I'm going to pick an instrument with no buttons.
We all have this story. This seems so cross-platform for all of us.
The lazy stereotype of trombonists already setting in sixth grade for me. So that's why I picked the trombone, and here I am, I don't know, 15, 16 years later, still playing. It's quite incredible. I've been active my entire life growing up playing sports, and when I got into my freshman year of college, I was taking piano lessons alongside of trombone lessons, and my piano professor said, "Hey, my wife teaches these yoga classes. I think you'd be really interested in them." So I started taking yoga just to try it, and really, when I first started taking yoga classes, it was a form of working out for me. And I kept going to classes just for the workout. But after a couple months, I started to notice that it wasn't just helping me become physically stronger and help my flexibility, but also I was gaining some really incredible mental benefits. I found that I was less stressed. I found that I could approach stressful situations with a more calm mind. I noticed that my performance anxiety had gone down when I was performing my instrument. So when I noticed those things, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to share this with all of my friends, because I mean, I was that music major that was in the practice rooms until 2 a.m. every single morning. um, we've all been there. And so I had all these friends that were doing that as well. And I was like, hey, there's this thing that's really helping me, and it's called yoga. And so I started forcing all my friends to come to yoga with me. Halfway through my undergrad, I had fallen so much in love with yoga and the benefits it had brought to my life that I decided to become a yoga teacher. So I got my first yoga certification the summer after my junior year of college, and going into my senior year, I started teaching a yoga for musicians class to my peers in the music department, which was so much fun. At that same time, I was working through an injury related to the trombone. I had an overuse injury in my neck. And that was an extremely difficult and humbling time period for me. I barely made it through my senior recital. I was in a lot of pain and wearing a neck brace a lot of the time. And yoga was the one thing that really helped me feel okay. Yoga helped me feel balanced in my body. It helped me release tension that I was feeling in my neck. So I really, really turned to my practice at that point to help me overcome my injury. Once I had realized how much yoga could help me through this injury, I started really looking into the music world and noticing that there are so many people that work through injuries. It's everywhere. It's some crazy percentage, like 90%, 97% of musicians have dealt with some type of tension or pain in their music careers. After sports, we're the second highest field prone to injuries. So that was crazy to me. And it became my mission to help other musicians not go through what I went through, because what I went through was, I wouldn't wish upon anyone. It was debilitating physically and mentally. And if it weren't for yoga, I really don't think that I would be playing my instrument today.
It's amazing. It's so interesting to hear you talk about it too, because in our field, and for those of you that have not had an injury in any way and have played, without pain, you're very fortunate. Many of us, professionals, amateurs, at all echelons of performance, have gone through this experience, and it's really still quite stigmatized. We
It
don't
is.
talk about it as a community, um, and you can feel very alone when you're going through an injury. So, I think it's so important that you're able to talk about that and be vulnerable, and then make a calling out of it and find a way to help other people not go through that. I've had my fair share of injury as well, and it is physically difficult, but it is mentally crippling. It really is.
Yes.
That is where the beef is, and it's so great to hear you talk about it in such an evolved light, where you can really look at it from so many different facets. So now today you still do play, but you also have launched this multifaceted world of support. You have a blog, you have a social media presence, you have a YouTube channel, you have a website with individual classes. What is it like to run all of that in one place?
It has been a wild journey. And when I first started posting on Instagram a few years ago, and it was crazy how much immediate positive response I got, which really told me that musicians need this resource right now. When I first started posting about wellness and yoga for musicians on Instagram, there weren't very many other people that were doing it. And I started my YouTube channel because I wanted to share my passion of yoga with as many people as possible. Through Instagram, I found and connected with other wellness teachers for musicians, and that's how I started running my own business, Yoga for All Musicians, with two other co owners, and that has been just the most incredible ride. We launched in May, right in the middle of quarantine and COVID craziness. And we now have built up our business and we teach yoga classes every single day to musicians. And it is just a dream come true for me. We're helping so many people. We host community nights, and it's just the most wonderful community of people who are invested in their wellness as musicians.
That's really amazing. I think it's so exciting, and I once again would encourage any of you to check it out. I don't think you'll be sorry. I'd like to dig into a few hot button issues in the world of performance and maintenance for performance. Let's call it. And I think the big one is the R word. I want to talk about relaxation, and we all have this. We've all had this experience where a teacher says, "Oh, you need to relax," or "Oh, you need to relax your embouchure, relax your corners, relax your lips, relax your breathing. You just seem tense. Your neck is tense. Really relax it." And I've always had so many thoughts on this. Both as a pedagogue myself, I have very complicated thoughts on it. But I'm more interested in yours because, quite frankly, you're the expert. Um, Relaxation has always seemed like a state of inaction, to be relaxed to me. But when someone tells you to relax, that is an active command and not something passive. And I've always kind of had trouble getting my mind around that. How do you actively relax?
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if people have asked you about this, but a lot of
I
people were very curious about the word. So,
Yeah, I love this question, and I actually really dislike the word relax. I don't use it in my yoga classes. I don't use it when I'm teaching trombone because the word relax can be used in such a negative connotation. I'm sure you've heard a trombone professor aggressively tell you to relax. And that used in that context is just the complete opposite of what we're getting at, right? And so we
or
and
relax.
relax is also a word that can trigger a lot of trauma in people. So it's a triggering word and I don't like to use it. So I like to instead think about finding ease and finding softness. Those are my two favorite words, ease and softness. Um, so I think of these things as not the opposite of tension, because obviously we still need to have a certain amount of support and engagement in our bodies to hold up our instrument, to support our posture. But ease and softness allow you to release the muscles that surround the supportive structure of your body while still maintaining that posture that we need. So when I'm teaching trombone lessons, I'm teaching a sixth grader right now, and it's the cutest thing in the whole world. But I teach him how to hold a tall posture, which requires engagement, right? Engagement through your core, engagement through your shoulders to hold up the heavy instrument. And then I say, now around that structure, can you find softness? So the softness comes in the areas of our body that we don't need to have extra tension, like the tops of our shoulders, the muscles in our face, the sides of our body, our legs. So it's kind of, you're balancing two things at once. You're balancing that structured posture, and then you're also at the same time finding as much ease in your body as possible. Does that make sense?
It does. That's brilliant. I really like that. I found in my teaching that I use the word stillness a lot, but even for some people, the idea of stillness is difficult to connect to because, if you have a muscle flexed, it can't be still. It shakes, and I never really found a cerebral way to get around that. So that's really great. Softness in particular.
Yeah. Well, stillness to me is really limiting, and stillness can feel really rigid to me. If you've ever done any Alexander technique, their whole philosophy is the opposite of stillness, right? You always want to be in a place where you can move with ease. And sometimes when we're told to be still, we think we have to freeze. And so I think that the word soft encourages mobility, and it encourages us to feel like we can move freely at the same time.
So connected to the idea of removing relaxation from our vocabulary and maybe choosing better words, I thought we could talk a little bit about breathing as well. Breathing and breath control and breath support are all things that often get associated with control over your body, and particularly for people that are not larger with large lung capacities, breathing on a low brass instrument, or quite frankly, any instrument or singing, can become a storm to navigate as a professional or as an amateur player. I would love to know your thoughts on breathing and how your approach to breathing to play has changed since you've begun practicing and teaching yoga.
Yeah, absolutely. So I come back to this word ease in my mind. We want our breath to be as easeful as possible and as natural as possible. Um, a forceful breath in has this connotation of tension to me. So if I'm forcing myself to breathe in as fully as possible, that's going to create tension in unwanted areas of my body. So what I do when I'm working on finding the most full breath possible for myself, I do two things. First, I break down my breath in yoga terms, which I'll come back to later. And second, I set my horn aside and just practice natural breathing away from the horn. Sometimes when we pick up our instrument, we tend to go back into those maybe negative habits of bad breathing structure and using our breath in a forceful, aggressive way. So I'll talk a little bit about the yoga breath that I use first. It's called the three-part breath or the Durga pranayama. Pranayama is Sanskrit for breathing techniques. And this breathing technique teaches you how to focus and draw your awareness into the full capacity of your breath. So the three parts are your belly, your rib cage, and then your collarbone. So it starts really simply. Let's do one together. How does that sound? So take your hands to your belly and take a deep breath in. Feel your belly expand. And then exhale through your nose, which I know is atypical for us trombonists, but exhale through your nose, feel your belly release. Let's do that one more time. Inhale, feel your belly expand. And then exhale, belly releases. So second part, we're going to add our rib cage up to that. You can take your hands out to your rib cage and take a deep breath in, fill up your belly. And then your rib cage, you might feel your hands expand outward. Exhale, soften through your rib cage and your belly. Let's do that one more time. Inhale, belly, rib cage, and soften, rib cage, belly. So we're building up our breath, filling up our entire torso. Now take your hands to your collarbone and breathe in belly, rib cage, all the way up to your shoulders, and then exhale, release down. One more time on your own. I think of this breath as like filling up a balloon. So as you're inhaling, you're expanding in 360 degrees, not just the front of your body, but your sides as well. Then as you exhale, everything softens. So that's when I find that I'm taking really tight, tense breaths. I come immediately back to that. I set my instrument aside and I just remind myself of the fullness of the breath, taking in a breath that can fill up my entire torso, that's very soft and not forced.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely was taking in more air the last time there, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's crazy because when we play our instruments, we usually only use about 40% of our lung capacity. And
Wow.
this breath really teaches us to use more than that. And sometimes we need more than 40% when we're playing our instruments, right? And so then what I do is I will pick up my instrument and just try to find that breath while I'm holding up my instrument, exhale through the mouthpiece without playing. So we're not attaching the breath to sound quite yet. We're just finding that natural breath with our instruments. And then once I find that I can hold my instrument and still take that deep breath, that's when I add on the playing on top of that.
Really great, a nice little additive system to put everything into place. Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, so many of us have trouble with breathing in context as opposed to out of context. And I just love how you're able to marry those two ideas between, like step by step introduction, the whole synthesis, analysis, synthesis pattern that we use in education to have a problem, deconstruct it, build it piece by piece, and then find a solution. Um, it just seems so natural when you describe it that way. That's great.
Absolutely. Well, and our breath is a natural thing. We don't have to think about breathing.
Right?
So
We're all breathing experts, right?
if if you have expelled all of your air playing a phrase, your body is naturally going to breathe in the amount that it needs to keep yourself alive. So that's why I keep coming back to this natural breath. Your breath is going to do what it needs to do already. We can just remind it to be extra full with a little bit of awareness.
That's great. Yeah. Here's another question that has come up from a few people. And it's this idea, I guess a stigma is a better way to put it, that yoga sometimes carries. It carries a connotation that people that do yoga are all, people that are very into yoga, and it's a big part of their lives, and they live the entire existence, and maybe they eat that way, and they dress that way, and their apartments look beautiful. I see plants in the back of yours. So I just am curious for the people that maybe would like to participate in this, but don't want to, let yoga take over their lives, but really want to still appreciate the benefits and maybe dip their toe in the pool rather than jump in, so to speak. How would you talk to people like that? Because it's clear that there are great benefits here for everybody.
Absolutely. Well, I do want to address that there is a really awful stereotype for yogis, which is a fit white woman. And I hate that I represent that. And I hope that people understand that yoga is for everyone and everybody. Doesn't matter your size, the color of your skin, your background in being physical. There are so many types of yoga. And so I say don't knock it until you try it, right? Like there are, and once you try one class, if you don't like that, there are literally hundreds of other different types of yoga that you could try. There's a yoga style and a yoga class and a yoga teacher out there for every single person. Um, for me, it's not so much about the yoga, but the mindfulness. And that's the most important thing that I've gotten out of yoga. So maybe you don't want to do yoga. That's fine. Can you take the mindfulness aspect into other things that you do, like washing your dishes in the sink or taking a walk, turning off your phone for an hour and reading a book? Something like you can take the mindfulness aspect of yoga into literally anything else in your life. And all it is just focusing in on the present moment. So that's what we practice in yoga. We practice on finding our breath and listening to our bodies in the present moment. But you can do that while you're playing basketball. You can do that while you're playing the trombone. Yoga is just a really wonderful way to introduce that topic to you if you've never practiced mindfulness before.
Yeah, I really like that. It is interesting that there are these stigmas, but at the end of the day, the one thing that everybody that I've ever met that practices yoga has in common is focus and a mental clarity and focus that they maybe don't have immediately, but they've committed their lives to developing. And my favorite quote for trombone playing is and has been for a long time, "Your focus determines your reality." And that's not a yoga quote. That's a Star Wars quote. And as embarrassing as it is, it just goes to show that you can anybody can relate to these ideas. And I'm so glad that you said that so succinctly because um, I really do feel like when people challenge their preconceptions, they learn so much.
Yeah, and aside from yoga, I think the best thing you can do for focus and mindfulness is meditation. I would say if you don't want to try yoga, I would absolutely try meditation. Um, Meditation actually builds our focus muscle in our brain. You can think of that focus part of your brain as a muscle. And every time you meditate, it's like you're pumping iron, you're you're flexing your bicep. And so over time, as you meditate more, your focus capacity increases. And that's something that I have really loved from my meditation practice is I've noticed when I play my instrument, I can hold focus for a longer period of time. And that's something we all struggle with, right? Like we're in the practice room and our mind's just going in all different directions. The last thing that we're focused on is the long tones that we're playing. Or on stage when you're nervous and you're thinking about the audience rather than the actual music that you're playing. Meditation can be such a powerful tool to help you zero in on your present task, whether that's practicing, whether that's driving your car, whether that's performing on stage.
Yeah, yeah. It really does all come down to focus. I mean, we're all guilty of Netflix and lip slurs occasionally. I feel like there are better solutions, and if it really is a muscle, I think then we should all be building it.
Yes.
Right. So one question that I think is really important to pose to everybody that I interview is the idea of struggle. And all trombonists at all levels, but particularly when you get to really advanced players like yourself, we have to talk about difficulties that we've come across in our journey. And so I was wondering, Amelia, if you would maybe address an issue that you had in your playing or still do, something that was a real obstacle for you, and talk a little bit about what you've done to overcome it or to maintenance it, and maybe how that has changed your approach to playing long term.
Yeah. You know, Alex sent me questions beforehand, so I had a little bit of time to think about this. And when I first read this question, I was like, oh, my upper register is what I struggle with the most, blah, blah, blah. And then I was thinking, like everyone has those technical things that they struggle with on their instrument, but me being a wellness teacher, I think it's more important to talk about something that I struggle with more on the mental side of being a musician, which is imposter syndrome.
Great.
Imposter syndrome has just been debilitating for me my entire trombone career. And it is extremely difficult to work through that. Um, so I share that because if anyone else is struggling with imposter syndrome, I think it's really important to know that you are not alone and that so many of us work through that. And if you don't know what imposter syndrome is, it's basically feeling that you are not, you are not, you're not worthy of the things that you've achieved, or everyone will figure out that you're not as great as you actually are, or you don't think that you live up to other people's standards. So it's kind of this culmination of not truly believing in yourself and recognizing your worth. This issue of imposter syndrome that I've dealt with actually got worse when I went through my injury, because all of a sudden I was completely stripped away of my identity. I identified as a trombonist, and a really good trombonist. I had won a national competition, and I knew that I was going to go really far and go straight into grad school and be in the symphony someday. And suddenly I couldn't even play my instrument. And so all of a sudden it was like I knew that I was a good musician, but I couldn't fulfill that. I couldn't physically play my instrument. So it took me down this really dark spiral of an identity crisis and not really knowing who I was without the trombone. After overcoming my injury, it's been kind of a wild ride reframing my mindset around who I am, my worth, who I am as a trombonist, who I am as a musician, my purpose as a musician. And I still feel like my playing is not 100% back to where it was before my injury. And that's really frustrating. I think my musicianship has grown and I'm a better musician, but technically, the injury really set me back with that. So that's something that I am dealing with and I struggle with every day, and I have not overcome it, but I'm on the journey to. And it's important that every day I start fresh with a clear mindset. That's been the biggest thing for me. Every day is a new day. Every moment is a new opportunity to start fresh, to start with a clean slate. And that's what I've been doing, trying to let go of these negative associations of imposter syndrome along the way.
It's incredibly powerful to hear you talk about it. I also went through a very difficult injury. I tore through my embouchure and was not playing well for a good year and a half of very difficult imposter syndrome as well. But everybody has imposter syndrome, and this is the thing that you're never aware of. You know, it's almost like we all suffer silently and alone, but each individually in that capacity, we're all going through the same thing. You know, I've heard household name huge trombone players talk about it in the same way as I've heard freshmen in undergrad. And we're all in this together in this same place. So the idea of destigmatizing this and understanding that it's not a video game. We're not trying to get to the next level. We're trying to make music along the way. And we're all going to get better as players. But this community that we have, that we're all kind of individually crafting from different angles, is what lifts us all up. You know, water seeks its level is what my graduate teacher always said. And as long as we're bringing the level up together as a community, we're all going to be okay.
Absolutely. Well, and I like to remind people that music is not a competition. I know that we're placed in competition environments a lot, but music is not about competing with another person. It's about your unique expression of musicality and how beautiful it is that what you have to give to the world is completely different than any other musician that you come across.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that's interesting about running this pedagogy presence trombone guide is that I come across a lot of really funny quotes. And I think the best one I've come from across it thus far is Bella Bartok saying, competition is for horses, not for artists.
Yes, yes,
All
yes.
the time. I know it's a tough subject to talk about, but I want to dive back into the injury.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit about some of the strategies that you have used to work through your individual day by day growth. And I know you said every day is a clean slate, is a blank slate, and that has been powerful for me as well, and other trombonists that I've spoken to about injuries. It's funny when you have an injury, suddenly you find everybody that's an expert in injuries, and you start talking because it is again you're a ship adrift in a storm, and you just and that being said, I would invite any of you, if you are dealing with an injury, you can feel free to message me, and I will share my story with you, and we can talk, of course. Amelia, I'd love to hear a little bit about some of your day-to-day strategies.
Yeah. Well, when I first started experiencing my injury, it was end of my junior year of my undergraduate degree. I ignored it for a really long time, actually, and I thought that if I just didn't think about it, that it wouldn't be an issue, which of course is the opposite of what you want to do. As soon as you notice that something's off in your body and doesn't feel right, it's important to address that. My injury came from playing out of alignment of posture, which is why I preach posture all day long to musicians now. When our bodies are out of alignment, that creates unnecessary tension within our bodies. So in my instance, I was tilting my head over to one side, which causes quite an imbalance because one side of your neck is overstretched and feels like it has to work extra hard to hold up your head, and the other side of your neck is compressed and those muscles grow shorter. So playing like that, I'm sure I started playing like that in sixth grade when I was a tiny little girl picking up a giant instrument. Playing like that over years actually realigned my spine. And so yes, it was crazy. My x-rays were wild. The natural curve in my cervical spine was just gone. So it took a lot of rehabilitation to realign my spine. And then I think honestly, the hardest part was reteaching myself how to hold a correct posture because my body just instantly wanted to revert back to old habits as soon as I picked up my instrument. So part of my process, and I don't think this is necessary for everyone, but part of my process was taking an entire year off of playing my instrument. After I graduated from my undergrad, I did not touch my trombone. It stayed in its case for an entire year. I think that halfway through that year, I was probably okay to physically play the trombone, but mentally I was so burned out from my injury that I needed more of a mental break. I needed a longer mental break for myself. So taking rest is something that I often encourage people to do. We live in such a go, go, go society, and as a musician, we always feel like we have to be practicing and striving to the next level. But rest is a very, very vital part of our journey and growth. When I got back to finally playing my instrument, I broke it down in tiny steps, just like we kind of talked about earlier. First, since it was such a mental thing for me, trombone in my mind equaled pain. And so even just like listening to trombone music brought about tension in my body. So it sounds dramatic, but it really affected my psyche. When I first started, I just opened up my trombone case and I looked at my trombone. And that was really challenging for me. The next day, I opened up my trombone case and I touched my trombone. The next day, I opened up my trombone case, I put my trombone together, put it on the music stand, and just looked at it. The next day, I did all of that, and then I picked up my mouthpiece. The next day, I buzzed. The next day, I buzzed for 2 more minutes. I built it up so slowly, and I'm very grateful that I had the time and the space to take that time. I wasn't in school at that time. I was just working like a random food service job, and I had the time to actually rebuild, and that was really, really important to me. It takes patience, it takes time, and I think because I went so slowly and was really careful about not overdoing it, I was able to healthily get back into playing. So it was quite a process.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, trauma is trauma, and that this is how one overcomes trauma, like this, step by step.
This and lots of therapy appointments.
Sure. Sure. Big fan of that too,
Yes.
for sure. Um, yeah. And it's shocking what a black hole in your brain you get from the exact thing that causes the pain. You talk about trombone music causing tension. And for me,
Hmm.
I lost middle G and F sharp in my range. There were notes I
Hmm.
couldn't play. Right in the middle
Hmm.
of the staff, when I would buzz them, nothing would come out. My
Hmm.
embouchure could not buzz them because that's where the injury sat.
Yeah.
And it is shocking when it's not like you lose high range or low range or loud playing. You lose very basic notes in the middle of your range. Suddenly, Roches or Hungarian March or excerpts that have those notes are terrifying. And I would see a trombonist play a G in fourth position, and my whole spine would tighten.
Mm.
I knew I couldn't do it,
Yeah.
and that is it is a new level of fear. So working through it is incredibly empowering. But you have to talk to yourself like a 4 year old. You have to be kind and warm and remind yourself that it's okay to take this baby step by baby step and you trust the process, just like anything else.
Absolutely. I think compassion was very, very important for my growth back into playing. And I still have to remind myself to be compassionate to myself because everyone has off days, and some days I feel like I've taken 10 steps back and just have to recognize that as it's okay. It's
Yeah,
okay
we can
to
easily
not
forget.
have a good day. It's okay to feel like you're not where you want to be, and everyone has those days, and we just breathe through it, and the next day can be a new opportunity.
Absolutely. Um, Compassion is something that our whole industry needs more of always. And
Yes. Yes.
in a culture of go, 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 win this audition, place in this competition, do this, do that. You should be doing all these festivals, all these programs. What, you're not practicing excerpts at 6 p.m.? What are you doing? Like maybe we need a little less of that once in a while too.
Maybe a little self-love should be sprinkled in there.
Maybe take a day off.
Yeah.
Great. I'm going to jump right into some lightning round questions because we are running tight on time here, but I have so many things I could ask. We could talk about this for hours. Amelia, do you have a favorite trombone solo piece that you like to listen to or like to play?
Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with the Schumann romances right now.
Great. Do you have a favorite moment in a performance that you've given that just sticks out in your mind as a really magical moment?
I think the entire Mahler Fifth Symphony that I've played, just you can't beat that.
No, you can't. No, you cannot. Favorite book?
Favorite book? Pride and Prejudice, which is also my favorite movie and my favorite soundtrack. It's like a triple threat to me.
Which version of the movie? Is it the
The one with Keira Knightley.
Oh, okay, great. And finally, do you have a meaningful quote that sticks in your mind when you're playing that you come back to?
Not necessarily for trombone. I mean, this relates to everything. My favorite quote mantra for me is "What you seek is seeking you," which is a quote that embodies manifestation. So anything that you're searching for in this moment, the universe has already got your back and it's sending it your way.
I love that. That's great. Um, so I would love to ask another question, but I think it's probably more useful for everybody if I just give you a moment to talk a little bit about some of the great projects you're working on. Maybe something for Yoga for All Musicians or anything else that you're working on right now.
Yeah, well, before I dive into Yoga for All Musicians, I do want to mention that I write a quarterly wellness column for the International Trombone Association Journal. So if you are a member of ITA and you have access to the journal, you can read about wellness every quarter. And I've been writing this for about a year and a half now. It's been so incredible to share little wellness tips with the trombone community. I've gotten a lot of feedback, and I would love to hear yours. If you get a chance to read any of my articles, please send me a message. It means a lot to me when you all engage with my wellness blogs.
Absolutely, you can learn more, right?
Yeah. I have a YouTube channel. I'm not as active on that as anymore. It's called Music Body Mind. So you can check out some YouTube videos on meditation and yoga there. But the biggest thing I encourage you to look up is my business, Yoga for All Musicians. Uh, Short is YAM, YAM. And it's a virtual yoga studio that was created by musicians for musicians. And we teach yoga classes every single day of the week, and we have one free class a week. So if you're ever free at 4:30 on a Sunday afternoon Central Time, would love to see you in a yoga class. If you are one of those people that's unsure about yoga and not quite sure if it's for you yet, you can try it out for free with just the most supportive, encouraging community that exists. We are so passionate about helping musicians find ease and find peace in their musicianship, and we hope to see you in a class.
Awesome. Well, this has been great, and I've learned a lot. I hope you've all learned a lot too. Amelia, thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, and I hope that you guys will check out the other episodes of Guided Listening. We've got another one coming out in 3 weeks, and I will tell you who that will be with next week. So I wish you all the best. Happy practicing.